weekend. Obviously, as you're all aware, the week of the 8th of March, what should have been a big celebration for International Women's Day, ended up being a week of, I think it's 30 weeks ago, the wake of Sarah Everard's death, and then the protest and the way the protesters were treated. And I think, even from my own perspective, from a We Are the City community, I felt like there was a lot of kind of pain and emotion that was wrapped around that week, and kind of everyone that I spoke to was feeling that. And our first thoughts, post our own community was with you guys, and thinking, how are you responding to some of those things that were going on? Because obviously your own communities were probably feeling the same as what ours were. So our idea was to call this meeting together because we knew that some of the companies had already kind of sprung into action and were putting things in place where they had male ally programs, where they could. But there was a number of you that kind of came to us and said, we're not quite sure where this sits or where the messaging should come from or what we should be doing, but we know we need to be doing something and acknowledging something. So there's a few companies that kind of I've reached out to and that reached out to us and said, look, we've already mobilised, we're not there yet, but we've kind of mobilised on a few initiatives, and I've asked them to share that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 5 companies on this call, and then I'll call out to anyone else that's doing things that they want to talk about. And then I'm going to put you all into kind of breakout rooms to have a little bit of a discussion around the own temperature check of your own organisations and anything else you're thinking of doing, just so that you can kind of bounce off of each other in that room. And then I'll call you all back in. And then if anyone wants to talk to things that went on in that room, you guys can talk and share, because that's the whole point of Gender Networks is, we're all kind of in this together and we want to do the best for our communities. So unless you're speaking, if I can ask you to go on mute, I can just hear some background clicks.
I jump into the room.
Sorry? That's all right. I think whoever that was, they went on mute. So first one I'm going to come to, because I can see them on my screen, is Chloe at Wix. So Wix are a new member of Gender Networks. Chloe reached out to me and said they've done some things. So Chloe, can you unmute, please, and just share what you've been doing at Wix?
Yeah, of course I can. Hi, everyone. So I think it was initially a conversation that started between me and one of our divisional directors. We, I suppose, wanted to acknowledge the events that were kind of like unfolding, but weren't necessarily unsure of how to recognise them. So initially what we did was we kind of like posted on our internal network, on our internal forums. That was across our Making Wix Inclusive forums. So whether it was our race forum, it was our wellbeing forum, our ability forum. So kind of like all of the networks came together and we posted the same message around safety and conversation and where to turn to for support, whether that was for colleagues or whether that was for customers or someone else within that colleague's life. So we gave an overview of where they could reach out internally, so kind of like the colleague services that we have within Wix. And then we also called out some key, I suppose, organisations and support forums externally as well that those people could turn to if they wanted some external support and advice. So I suppose that was our first step. I suppose as momentum seemed to gather and the conversation become louder and the frustration and anger became more apparent, we wanted to do something more overt and kind of like more externally. So you may have seen a number of readers showing their stance on what safety means. And I suppose
sorry to interrupt you. I can hear someone typing quite loudly in the background. Can everyone just make sure that they're muted, please? Thank you. Sorry, Chloe.
No, it's fine.
Go ahead.
I think so you may have seen a few retailers, I suppose, share messages of support, creating or informing, I suppose, their colleagues and their customers that their shops and I suppose their offices are safe spaces. So if anyone ever needed support, whether that was internal or external, that person could come into the store as long as they needed and ask our colleagues for support. So towards the back end of last year, we launched a campaign called Let's Care for Each Other. So it fitted nicely into that, as our colleagues had already been trained on kind of like the how to report kind of like abuse and how to support colleagues, and obviously what support and tools we've got in place to support them as well. So it naturally fell into that. But that wasn't just internal, so we created some messaging, we shared that across all of our social media channels. It's very prominent on our Wix homepage. If you go on our website and have a look, the messaging is very prominent there, and we've also shared it across emails to customers. So we wanted to be very overt with how our stance on safety and abuse towards our colleagues and also towards women. And then probably the last thing that we are looking to do is we have a number of colleagues within our stores who are out about on the roads and are at customers' houses. We have a number of personal safety devices. So what we're looking at doing there is rolling that out further to the colleagues who may feel vulnerable, who would want something a little bit, or something to support them there. So whether they're in store, whether they're working, or they can use that outside of the store as well when they're not working. So just an additional measure to support our colleagues who may feel vulnerable at this time, being a little bit more supported. So kind of that's a brief overview of where we've got to. So we've got a couple of initiatives kind of like underway, or some messages that we've already shared with colleagues and customers externally as well.
Fantastic. So if any of you want to ask Chloe any particular questions around any of those campaigns or anything like that, and Chloe, you may want to post some links in the chat group. Just post them in the chat, and then Chloe, if you wouldn't mind answering them. So the next one I'm going to come to is Joe Fowles, Oliver Wyman. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing?
Hi there, thanks very much. I think this is my first time in this forum, so nice to meet you all. I guess probably what I have to share is a little bit broader than the specific response to the events of the last few weeks. So, I mean, at Oliver Wyman, we have been sort of working on male allyship specifically for a little while now. And I think it was back in around 2018, we sort of recognized that we weren't making as quicker progress as we'd like on sort of gender diversity more broadly. And one of the aspects where we wanted to kind of stimulate action was around our kind of male colleagues specifically. And, you know, being in FS, it's largely, you know, our senior positions are largely filled by male colleagues as they are in other parts of the industry. Sorry, someone can go on mute, please. So, background noise.
Everyone go on mute, please.
Great, thanks. So in sort of partnership with our women's network, we founded a sort of parallel network called Men for Change, which is aiming really to sort of actively engage our male colleagues and encourage kind of awareness, dialogue and action, initially sort of on gender issues, but now increasingly with quite an intersectional approach. And since we sort of first brought this concept to the table in 2018, we've now established kind of Men for Change teams or sort of chapters in around sort of 20 offices globally. And typically that involves a sort of senior male sponsor or a couple of male sponsors, and then a team of 2 or 3 people who are sort of coordinating a series of activities on the ground, so to speak. And the activities that we do are sort of largely in 3 buckets. So there is a lot of internally facing initiatives, so workshops around allyship, expansion of kind of mentoring programs, discussion for reading series, speaker series, that kind of stuff. We also, and perhaps particularly relevant for the people on this call, we have a sort of external engagement pillar where we look to work and sort of share and learn best practices from other kind of similar male allyship networks across our sort of clients and our partners. And we've had a sort of couple of workshops with, you know, various people on these topics. And then the third element is really kind of external thought leadership, we say. So I think we've published kind of several articles on this topic, people bringing kind of personal perspectives combined with kind of practical advice. And we found that across those kind of 3 dimensions, we've had quite a good impact really in terms of educating and engaging our male colleagues and being able to give them quite sort of practical ways to contribute. And by having a sort of formal network already in place, it allowed us to respond, I guess, quite sort of nimbly in the wake of the events in Clapham, and that was a sort of an all office kind of communication from one of our sort of senior male sponsors, and a sort of follow-up session with our women's network. So that's a sort of high-level overview of what we've done. I know I've got a colleague, Morgan, who's on the line, and Morgan, maybe you can give the sort of 30-second, 1-minute overview of one of our pillars, which might be of interest to the people on the call.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and hi, everyone. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about one of our core sessions that we've developed over the last few years that Joe mentioned, and that's the Allyship workshop. So I guess in its most simple form, the Allyship workshop it's a chance for a cross-section of colleagues to come together, learn what it means to be an ally, and discuss example scenarios in sort of small facilitated groups. So the aim of that is not only to, of course, support education in the area and I guess provide a forum for open discussion on responsible allyship, but really to start to take responsibility off the marginalized colleagues, to foster trust between colleagues, to drive inclusive culture, and but finally also to develop an ally toolkit. So learning tangible ways to support our colleagues. So during these discussions, we talk about what it is that can make a particular scenario problematic. For example, how leaving all social events to be organized by female members of the team could reflect gendered expectations on who does non-work essential tasks. But then also, what can be done in response, or how you can try and avoid these altogether. We've run these workshops in our offices across the world through the network. And I think in doing so, we've really learned that tailoring these sessions to the audience and to the delivery method has been really crucial in getting good engagement. So, whether that's cultural, regional differences or seniority level, or more recently, I guess, virtual delivery, where breakout rooms on Zoom, online tools where, anonymous stickies can be posted under prompted questions have really been a fantastic catalyst for engaging discussion. We found that this direct interaction and engagement with scenarios has really been able to bring to life, I guess, the concept of being a good ally. So I hope that gives a little bit of an insight, I guess, into how we're thinking about this at Oliver Wyman. We're really keen to keep learning and finding new ways to make progress. So in that vein, we're always looking to collaborate with others. So do reach out.
Fabulous. Thank you so much to the team at Oliver Wyman. Have we got anybody on? I think I'm waiting for Caroline. Have we got anyone on from PwC? Is Neha with us from PwC?
I'm from PwC. Sorry, I was double muted there.
Yeah. Neha emailed me, said that she, you guys have kicked off a couple of things. Is there anything you can talk to?
Yeah, sure. So we obviously put out a lot of content on our internal, I guess, kind of like a Facebook page kind of thing. So we were obviously signposting for our employee assistance program. We have a number of people across the organization who are trained mental health first aiders. So we've put on a number of sessions specifically targeted to women where they can go and it's a safe space and they can discuss concerns or anxieties that have kind of arisen out of the Sarah Everard situation, and just kind of, a safe space to talk about that and things that they might not feel comfortable speaking about when there might be men in the room or just with their wider teams and things like that. So we're kind of halfway through those sessions at the moment. We also, kind of similar to what was spoken to before, we've been thinking about male allies a bit. So last year we ran an everyday sexism campaign where we essentially had people sharing their experiences of the everyday sexism that they experience during their working lives. So we'd already had in development some content for how can we better support the women in our organizations. So we're still kind of in the process of rolling that out, but those will be specifically targeted to men, to say those sessions will be structured around actually what is the gendered experience and how does our gender impact our experience at work, and then what are the specific things that we can do to help women across the organization. And it's things like what I've spoken about before, you know, women not always taking the burden of organizing socials, or making sure that we allow everyone in meetings to speak up, or if you notice that someone's continually being spoken over, actually raising your voice and saying, I think so and so has an interesting point, let's listen to what they have to say. So just kind of small steps that we can all take. And then, yeah, so we've got those 2 sessions in development. We also put out a number of things because we were quite conscious around how there was this sort of intersectional piece around, there had been, for example, only a couple of weeks before, there'd been a very similar case in Trinidad and Tobago. Obviously, immediately afterwards, there was a shooting in the US as well. So we also put out some content around the kind of intersectional piece around gender and ethnicity, and how this is a really horrible situation, but also thinking more broader around how gender and ethnicity intersects, and how whilst Sarah Everard was a really important case, these situations are horribly happening on a daily basis to lots of people, and we don't hear their names. And so it's important that we kind of stick together and actually raise the voice and share concerns that where we have those intersections as well. So that was a really important piece for us.
Fabulous. Now, I know Caroline can't join us today, but I know Barclays are running an event and they're using their male ally programs as well. I think they're also engaging a couple of external speakers to come in and speak. So again, I can share them when I talk back with Caroline, but they also engage with a lady that I think I sent you all a link to, a lady called Gillian Kalchek from Safe in the City. But again, if any of you are thinking about kind of building this into your curriculums or anything like that, then obviously we can suggest some speakers for you depending on the shape of that event. So is there anybody else on the call before I put you into some rooms that can share some of the stuff, even if they're embryonic at the moment, around what some of you are doing?
Hi Vanessa, it's Sharon Agwal here from Invesco, and I just want to highlight an event that we've run this week, and it wasn't actually, it was planned to celebrate, you know, International Women's Day or Women's History Month, but it, unfortunately, I guess it tied into this. So it was a workshop around Choose to Challenge, and we engaged with a facilitator who sort of we collaborated on with some workshop programs on that. So if you're in a situation with microaggressions, what you can do around that. And she actually tied it back into the recent event. So we've had really good feedback internally around that. So I'm happy to share details of that if anyone's interested.
That's fabulous. Anybody else? Anybody thinking about doing an event, or anybody started anything? I'm interested, a lot of you said that you've put out comms. What was the nature of those comms? Was it an acknowledgement? Was it, you know, pointing people towards internal resources where people could go? Because I mean, some of the feedback we have from our community was those events were triggering in terms of personal experiences and things like that. So how do we support those individuals within our own workspaces? So can anyone talk to the kind of comms that they put out? Because as I say, there's a lot of networks on here that probably haven't hit a situation like this before. I think none of us have, but where, you know, we've needed to respond, to acknowledge. So can anyone talk to any comms or anything like that?
Vanessa, it's Anya here from law firm Simmons & Simmons.
Hi, Anya.
Hello. We did a small thing a couple of weeks ago. So we call it an open forum. So we set up a time at lunchtime for people to have sent to our whole UK, all our UK offices, and it was a safe space to talk about their feelings about the situation and their own personal experiences. So an element of catharsis. because I think people felt that they needed a channel, and they felt that they wanted to sort of talk, and we're obviously in a virtual world, so couldn't talk as easily to people in the corridors. And then the second half of the session sort of turned into, what can we as an employer do to help you, in terms of policies and reiterating the support that we have. And people found that really useful, and it sort of continued the discussion, which is one of the things I'm sort of keen to share from this session, is people are looking for, we had men and women attend that, for sort of more help in men understanding the issue and being how they can be allies, and how they can help their sons, and etc. etc. So I think that was an interesting first step, but I think people really appreciated just an open forum to be able to talk, the cathartic element of it.
Yeah, and I think that's where Caroline at Barclays was going, around kind of, you know, having everyone in the room to discuss the impact, you know, how the women felt, how the men felt, you know, because there was lots of different messaging that was coming across on social media around, you know, protect your daughters, educate your sons. There was lots of things, I don't know if you guys see it, about, you know, that probably we can all relate to, around safety on the streets, you know, walking with your keys in your hand, pretending you're on the phone and stuff like that. And they were big discussion points that were kind of covered in some of the external networks, you know, as a point to your point, and you're around just having a safe space to say, this has really upset me, you know, for whatever reason, or you feel the weight of the world, you know. So I think those safe spaces are definitely something that others should potentially look to. And sorry, Annie, did you want to come in on something else on that?
Sorry, I think it was me, because I was just going to build from Anya's point. So I'm Lucia, I work at Marsh, and I work within a division. We have a sort of diversity and inclusion group, and we also held a space like that, but actually initially we just did it as a women's, or anyone who identifies as women's only space. And one of the things that came out of that, in terms of how to help educate sort of males and male allies, was putting together, and we're just working on how this would look, but anonymous experiences that we've had either in the workplace or outside of the workplace, just to do with sexual harassment, or, you know, just misogynistic comments, and then providing those examples and sort of how we dealt with them, to help female colleagues who might be in a similar situation and not know what to do, but also just to provide male colleagues with an understanding of what we are talking about when we talk about these things. So we're looking to put that together. And then in terms of your question about sort of what were the comms we put out, again, this isn't sort of a company-wide, this is just within a division of 160 people. We put together a resource document just with sort of graphics, which were talking about why women are so frustrated, in terms of sort of Sarah Everard's case, where she seemed to follow the rules of keeping yourself safe, but actually that wasn't enough, and sort of explaining that's why we're trying to get men to sort of help and what they can do. And then touching on the intersectionality point and charities that you could get involved with that do look at more marginalized groups who might be more greater at risk. And then the other thing that we did was just saying government policy. I think it's closing today, but the government had extended the consultation period on the sort of, I can't remember what it was called, but it was around harassment. And the other thing was just from quite an apolitical point, was about the police crime and sentencing bill, and potentially what that could do for protests. And it was a template letter that you could write to your MP, but obviously because we're a large corporate, we're not trying to encourage you to have an opinion on it, but just making people aware. Sorry, that was a bit of a monologue.
No, that campaign that you're referring to was called Half the Story as well. So where they was kind of getting everyone to write to their MPs, and then there was a little bit of name and shaming if your MP didn't respond. But I mean, I can put a link to that if any of you are interested in that one. Was there anything else that anyone put in before I put you all in rooms? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I can give a quick update in terms of what DTCC are doing.
Fantastic.
What Lucia was sharing. So Gemma from DTCC and my co-chair Denise is on the call as well. So DTCC have built really strong relationships with the local police forces where our global sites are. And we're thinking of an event, and we've just started conversations with our network in the police force, and they're going to come in, and a police constable that sort of focuses on gender-based violence. She's going to speak to the reality of gender-based violence in the UK, and how the police force are responding to this. And then she's also going to talk about personal safety, so give advice to women and also men around the topic of, if you find yourself suddenly in an intimidating circumstance with a stranger, how to respond. If you're experiencing domestic abuse, like how you could potentially respond to empower individuals. And also, I guess, like, as a bypasser, or if you become aware of these two examples, how you can support someone. And so I think we really wanted to have an event that sort of equips and empowers individuals, because we know obviously this is like very prevalent, and we're hearing just more and more cases of gender-based violence. So that's just one event that we're sort of working on. And in terms of communication, so our CEO, he issued a communication talking about like the intersectionality of gender-based violence, and then we did an internal blog post specifically on the tragedy of the Sarah Everard case, and I guess the feelings that came out from that.
Yeah, great stuff. It's interesting, and a number of people kind of emailed us saying, is anyone CEOs putting out anything? So, and it was a kind of question as to where this sat, to kind of acknowledge it on people's internal intranet. So has anyone else got anything to share?
Yeah, hi Vanessa, it's Caroline, EY. Yeah.
Hi.
We had a firm-wide comm go out to everybody in the business, acknowledging what had gone on, acknowledging that people would feel this personally in some cases, and their experiences would have been shared and that kind of thing. So signposting to help within the firm and help externally. Oddly enough, on International Women's Day, we'd run a session with Laura Bates from the Everyday Sexism Project. It just kind of happened like that. So, and if anybody's not aware of that and wants to kind of find that, Laura Bates Everyday Sexism, it's an amazing website, and is a global website now, and basically allows people to signpost their experiences of everyday sexism, and a globally kind of sort of thing. And there's a book and there's a lot of project work come out of that, but that's a really, if you want to kind of get the message home about how prevalent some of this is, it's a really good way of looking at it. Where we're looking at now is we're in the process of building a comms, again, to go out firm-wide, to look at not just the Sarah Everard case, but also the rising violence against Southeast Asians that seems to be happening a lot as well at the moment. So we're trying to encompass a few of those situations, again, acknowledging that this isn't just something that's happening to women, this is happening to other parts of your business and parts of your colleagues as well. So we're trying to look at it from that side as well. And we're hoping to host that on Tuesday. That'll be open to the firm, not just to network members, but to the whole firm, whoever wants to come along. And it'd be a safe space to share experiences, but also for the firm to gauge kind of what's going on out there, how people are feeling directly, and to point them to the help that the firm can give, and towards the external availability of things. But the male allies is something that we're working on as well, quite broadly, because we quite understand that that's something, but equally we're conscious that we don't want the message to be going out that this is putting our guys under pressure kind of sort of thing, and making them feel that they're responsible when they may not be, sort of thing. So it's that balancing act that I think probably a lot of people are probably struggling with, because we're struggling with how to pitch some of these things as well at the minute.
Yeah, and I say, from the external networks perspective, we're seeing some kind of events that are focusing, you know, around kind of having that conversation with men about calling out misogyny, and, you know, using allies in that way, and what can men do to kind of help on the journey, you know, not pointing the finger, it's all men or anything like that, but there's lots of different things, you know, when those microaggressions happen, or, you know, when things are shared on WhatsApp groups and stuff like that, but just being the person that kind of calls some of that out. So again, very kind of interesting dialogue. Before I put you in your rooms, just something to think about, because this came up from a startup that I was talking to earlier on in the week, and they were saying, you know, obviously they're a startup, they don't have this big kind of, you know, machine that most of us belong to. But one of the things, like, their environment is built around events. And someone else on the call was saying, you know, when we all do get back to normal, there will no doubt be a spout of events because we all want to be together and stuff like that. But it's that is, you know, what the CEO was saying in his mindset is, what does that look like for women, you know, when they run events that finish at 10 o'clock, you know, before they've never even thought about people catching the last tube or how they get home or anything like that. So I just think it's something we need to have in the back of our mind when we're running events, when we're back in whatever the normal kind of looks like around, you know, the timing of some of the things that we do and stuff like that, and then the pressures that kind of might present. So just a little bit of food for thought. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put you in your rooms just to have a discussion around some of the stuff you've heard. Would it work in your organisation? Is there something you're going to take away? Is there anything else that you need? Because you can put that in the chat box and I'm going to have a look at it and see where we can point you towards resources or connect you with kind of other individuals. So I'm just going to put you in your rooms literally for 10 minutes. I know some people had to drop off at 12:30 anyway. And then I'll bring you back. We'll have a little bit of discussion. I should get you off around about 10 to 1, hopefully. So Leona, could you put everyone in their rooms, please? Hi, everyone. I hope you found those discussions useful. Excuse me. From just to give you a quick rundown of kind of what was spoken about in my room, and just to pick up the key points. Excuse me, something gone down my throat. You know, that male allyship is absolutely imperative. I think the space to talk was something that kind of came out. The ongoing communications, and I was just saying to my group, you know, we've seen monumentous things like this happen in the past year, and what tends to happen is a kind of, you know, a big response and then it peters out. So I think what we've got to be mindful of is that, you know, this isn't something that's going to go away. It's there, and how do we continue that message of support going forward in kind of a lot of the things that we do. And also the voice of, you know, we were just talking about one of the individuals in my room, a heavily male dominated industry, and just like circulating something that talks about, and I know a couple of you have already got something similar. What does good ship look like? What does calling out misogyny look like? You know, just because, again, I was explaining to my group, I've worked with lots of groups of guys and they want to help, but they don't know what that looks like. And that's fair. So sometimes I think we have to be explicit. And again, to the point that was made on one of the other shares was around, you know, giving people space to say, actually, this is misogyny. You may think this is banter or something like that, but actually, this is how it's interpreted. So I think if people don't know, then they can't be aware of their behaviour. So maybe there's a little bit more of that we need to do. And again, that ongoing kind of communication. One of the things, again, another observation, I was just saying this in my room, you know, roll back 5 years, you know, things like domestic violence, say misogyny, menopause, all of that. We kind of left it at the swing doors when we went in. They weren't the focus of events. And I think last year has massively changed that, you know, where we're much more empathetic to the fact that people have things going on in their life. I think the more we can acknowledge that within the networks, the better. People feel more included when they're kind of acknowledged, whether or not they're in that situation or they know someone else that is, or whether they know should they hit that situation, there's a safe space for them to come, you know, aside from the normal kind of internal support channels. So is there anyone else that wants to talk to anything before I let you all off on your Friday? Was anything come up in any of the rooms that anyone can talk to and share?
Sorry, I know I spoke before, but if no one else wants to say anything.
Everyone's fun shy.
Yeah, I think everyone just wants to make sure someone else is getting the chance to speak. But one of the things which we just started talking about at the end was engaging. So, you know, the idea of like a bit of an echo chamber, and with lots of things diversity and inclusion related, like the people who are engaging are the same people time and time again. And if anyone just had any ideas, so something that came across from our breakout room was that for those people who are kind of passive supporters, you basically make sure that at all colleague events, when you've got that audience there, like a town hall, you use that to leapfrog the diversity inclusion element. Does anyone have any other suggestions for engaging with groups who aren't always the biggest, you know, supporters or participants?
Can anyone talk to that? I mean, if not, it's something we can take offline, and I mean, there's a couple of members that I know that
are not on this call, like HSBC, that may be able to help you on that one, or Barclays even. So if no one can kind of come back on that on this call, I can connect you.
Sorry, was the question specifically around the Sarah Everard or just in general? Because I guess I could talk through in more general.
Yeah, yeah, generally as well, that would be helpful.
So obviously, we are really trying to, you know, get men on board, but equally, so I'm at NatWest/Coots. One of the things, so at Coots specifically, we do internal promotions, and for frontline, so revenue generating roles. And of the 17 people that got promoted in the last year, only 3 of them were women. And I called this out. So I'm a gender lead for male allies across NatWest Group. Obviously, I work specifically for Coots, so care about that as well. And I said, you know, for example, this last year has been devastating for women. We know that there's facts and figures to, you know, show that actually it's had such a horrific effect on women. You know, I think it's their stats to say for every 3 hours a man gets a dedicated work, a woman's getting 1 hour. And I said, you know, have we really let our female frontline staff down? Like, first of all, frontline roles tend to be male dominated. Why are we continuing to promote men and not promote females? You know, have we thought about more sponsorship? And so from off the back of the discussions with the head of D&I, we have said that from going forward, if any manager puts a male forward for promotion, they need to put a female forward. That's it. They will not be able to put a male forward for promotion unless a female is. And that's quite a hard hitting thing. And I'm sure we're going to get a few grumbles. But the fact of the matter is, even if that woman isn't ready for promotion that year, she's going to be ready the next year. We're going to have more focus. We're going to have names that we can actually target and sponsor and mentor and give that. And I guess it really annoyed me when I saw those figures, because I was like, how are we ever going to get to 50-50 if this is still happening? So I'm so pleased that we're actually doing stuff. And yes, I'm sure men will be saying, oh, well, she only got that because of X. But ultimately, we're not saying they're getting promoted. We're putting them forward, and then we're going to give them the space and time. We're also saying that all senior leader men have to go and mentor a junior female. That's the expectation. It's written into their objectives, and that's just it. And I think, you know, once people start seeing the benefits of that, they'll tend to get much more on the train with it. I don't know if that helps in any way.
Thanks, Ashley. That's good. It's always good to know what people are doing, and we share some of that in the gender networks. But it's great to know that, you know, that they're making some traction. And I know we're all kind of pushing ourselves to kind of drive change. So I think if no one else has got anything to comment, I'll let you go and get some time back. I hope this session's been useful. You know, if there was anything else that you wanted to ask, you can ping Leona an email, and we're circulating around the group. You're such a helpful group. And I know this has been, some of you are still kind of thinking, how do we respond? What does that kind of bring that into? But thank you to all the companies that kind of come and shared what they're up to. Again, if there's any questions, just ping them over to us. But I just wish you all a very happy weekend and a safe weekend. And I'll see you at the next Gender Networks. Any help that you need from us, please reach out. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.